Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Today we're diving into a topic that honestly feels ripped straight from science fiction,
Oh, yeah.
AI in law enforcement. But from what we heard in the Alternative World podcast, this is actually already happening all around us.
Right, yeah. It's changing how crimes are solved and how our neighborhoods are policed.
So that gets us to the big question we want to tackle in this deep dive. Could using algorithms to predict crime and figure out where to send police actually end up making our justice system less fair?
That's a really important question to consider, and like you said, it's a really complex issue. So many different angles to think about, but there's no doubt that AI has some pretty powerful potential benefits when it comes to law enforcement.
Like what?
Well, think about all the tasks that police have to do now. AI could automate a lot of those tasks, and it can analyze huge amounts of data.
Data that would take humans forever to go through.
Right. AI can find patterns in that data that could help police predict where crimes might happen.
So like giving police departments this high-tech boost.
Exactly. Think about all the data police departments have access to.
Oh, I'm sure it's a ton.
Oh, yeah. Crime stats, incident reports, even social media activity.
Yeah.
AI can go through all of that data and pick out patterns that would take humans ages to uncover.
So how is all this data crunching power being used by police departments right now?
One of the main ways is this thing called predictive policing.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Police are using AI to try and figure out where and when crimes are most likely to happen, and then use that information to decide how to use their resources.
So instead of just reacting to crimes after they've happened,
Yeah.
they can try to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly. And actually, there have been some real successes with this approach. Some cities that are using predictive policing have seen crime rates go down.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like I know some cities have used these programs to figure out where burglaries are most likely to happen and then have sent more officers to patrol those areas.
And that deters criminals.
That's the idea. But, the Alternative World episode pointed out a really big potential problem with this kind of predictive policing, something called algorithmic bias.
Right, yeah. Algorithmic bias. What is that?
So the basic idea is that AI is only as good as the data that's used to train it.
That makes sense.
But if the data itself is biased because of how policing has been done in the past, then the AI can learn those same biases.
Like if the data shows that certain neighborhoods have been over-policed in the past.
Right. Then the AI might learn that those neighborhoods are high crime areas, even if that's not really true. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Because if the AI keeps telling police that certain areas are high crime, then police are going to spend more time in those areas, make more arrests there, and then that data gets fed back into the AI.
And the cycle just continues, which can have a really unfair impact on communities that are already dealing with over-policing.
Man, that brings us to another big concern that was brought up in the Alternative World episode.
Which is...
racial bias in AI and law enforcement.
That's a huge one. If the data used to train these algorithms has racial disparities baked into it, then the AI might learn to associate certain racial groups with crime.
So it's not like the AI is intentionally racist,
Right.
but it's learning from data that reflects racist practices.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to know how these systems are being built and trained and who's building them. Transparency is key.
And I remember the Alternative World episode talked about a specific example of this.
Yeah, which one?
The compass system. I think that's being used in some courts to try and predict how likely a defendant is to commit another crime.
Yeah, that's right. COMPASS stands for Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. Some judges are using it to make decisions about sentencing and parole.
It seems like it could be helpful.
Yeah, it could be. But a ProPublica investigation actually found that COMPASS was a lot more likely to label Black defendants as high risk.
Even if they had similar criminal histories to white defendants. That's disturbing. So a tool that's supposed to make the justice system more fair could actually be making it less fair.
That's the big worry. And it shows why we need to be so careful about how we use AI in these high-stakes situations. We need to be aware of the downsides.
So are there any examples of AI being used in law enforcement in a way that seems to be working well?
There are definitely some applications that seem to be working well. For example, some police departments are using AI to analyze footage from body cameras.
Oh, interesting. What for?
Well, it can help identify cases where police might have acted improperly or used excessive force.
Okay, so that could help hold police accountable.
Right. It's not a perfect solution by any means, but it does offer a way to bring to light incidents that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. And another example is using AI to help with more routine police work.
Like what kind of work?
Stuff like analyzing evidence from crime scenes or creating sketches of suspects, those kinds of things.
And that frees up human officers to work on more complicated cases.
Right. So yeah, AI in law enforcement isn't all doom and gloom. I think the key takeaway is that it's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
It's all about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. And if we're smart about it and develop and use AI responsibly, it has the potential to help make our justice system more effective and more fair.
And ultimately, that's what we all want.
Right. A more just system for everyone. And I think that's a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, I think so too.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive so far.
Yeah, we have. From the potential benefits of AI in law enforcement
to the risks of algorithmic bias, racial bias, and potential for things to go wrong.
And we've talked about the need for transparency.
And careful thought about how we develop and use these powerful technologies.
And we'll be back soon to continue this deep dive into the world of AI and law enforcement.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
One of the biggest challenges with all this is that a lot of it is happening in what feels like a black box.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of these algorithms that are being used in law enforcement are proprietary.
Okay.
The companies that develop them don't have to explain exactly how they work.
So we're just supposed to trust that these companies are making sure their algorithms are fair and unbiased,
Pretty much.
even though we can't even see how they work?
That's a big concern for a lot of people. And that's why there are more and more experts calling for more transparency.
Right. Transparency. So we can actually see how these systems are being made and how they're being used. And I know the Alternative World episode mentioned something called algorithmic auditing as a way to deal with this.
Yeah, they did. Algorithmic auditing is basically having independent experts come in and review AI systems
Sure.
to make sure they're actually working the way they're supposed to.
So they can check for bias.
Exactly. And they can see how the system is impacting different groups of people, and then they can offer suggestions for making it better.
So it's kind of like a quality control check for algorithms.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And some places are actually starting to require these audits.
Really?
Yeah, some cities and some states are saying, okay, if you're going to use these AI systems in law enforcement, we need to make sure they're not causing more harm than good.
That makes sense. It seems like another really important thing is making sure that there are actual humans involved in all of this.
Oh, absolutely. Human oversight is crucial. You can have the most advanced AI in the world, but it's never going to be able to replace human judgment
Right.
or empathy or that understanding of the nuances of each individual case.
The Alternative World episode made a really good point about that. They said we should be thinking of AI as a tool to help human police officers, not to replace them.
That's a great way to put it. It should be a tool that helps us make better decisions, not a tool that makes decisions for us.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's humans who are responsible for making those really big decisions,
About arresting someone.
charging them with a crime.
Sentencing them. AI can give us information. It can give us insights. But it should never be the one making the final call.
Well, all this makes me wonder about regulation. Do we need specific laws or guidelines for using AI in law enforcement?
That's a debate that's happening right now. And there are good arguments on both sides.
Like what kinds of arguments?
Well, some people say that regulation is absolutely necessary, to prevent these systems from being misused.
To make sure they're not harming people.
Exactly. Because there's so much potential for harm. Algorithmic bias, the erosion of privacy, things like that.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the other side?
Other people say, hold on, if we regulate this too much, we might stifle innovation. We might prevent the development of new tools that could actually make us safer. And they also say it's really hard to write good laws when the technology is changing so fast.
Because by the time the law is passed, the technology is already outdated.
Yeah. So it's a tough question, but it's a question we need to be asking ourselves right now. How do we balance the need for innovation with the need to protect people's rights?
It's about finding that right balance.
Yeah.
We don't want to stifle innovation, but we also don't want to let these technologies run wild.
Exactly. And the Alternative World episode made a really important point about this. This isn't just a conversation for lawmakers and tech companies. This is a conversation that we all need to be having.
Right, because AI is affecting all of our lives, whether we realize it or not. So what can everyday people like us do to get involved in this conversation?
Well, the first thing is just to stay informed.
Educate ourselves.
Yeah. There are a lot of resources out there, articles, podcasts, things like that.
So we can understand what AI is, how it works, and what the potential implications are.
Right. The more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to advocate for the kind of future we want to see.
And to have conversations with our friends and families about all this.
Exactly. The more we talk about this, the more awareness we raise.
Yeah.
And the more pressure we put on the people in power to make responsible choices.
And we can also support organizations that are working to make sure AI is being used ethically and responsibly.
Right. There are a lot of great groups out there doing really important work. And of course, we can vote. We can vote for candidates who understand these issues and who are committed to making sure AI is used in a way that benefits everyone.
Yeah, that's a big one. We need to elect leaders who are thinking about the future and who are thinking about how to use these powerful technologies in a way that's fair and just for everyone.
And I think it's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed by all of this, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Like it's
Yeah.
all happening so fast.
Yeah. And it feels like this huge, complex issue. But the truth is, we all have a voice in this. We can all make a difference.
That's a good point.
Hmm.
It's not about being a tech expert or a policy expert. It's about staying engaged, asking questions, and making sure that these technologies are being used in a way that reflects our values.
Our values as a society.
Exactly. So we've talked a lot about the potential benefits of AI in law enforcement, and we've talked about the risks, but I'm curious to get into some more concrete
Oh,
examples
yeah, good idea.
of how this technology is actually being used out there in the real world.
Yeah.
What does this look like in practice?
Yeah, it's really a mix, to be honest.
Okay.
Some of the ways it's being used seem really promising, but others are raising some serious red flags.
Let's start with the promising stuff.
Okay.
Where is AI being used in ways that seem to be having a positive impact?
Well, one area where AI seems to be really helpful is in solving cold cases.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some police departments are using AI to go through those old case files,
Wow.
looking for patterns or connections that the original investigators might have missed.
So it's kind of like having a digital detective working on the case 24/7.
Exactly. And it's actually led to some breakthroughs in some cases. You know, families who have been waiting years for answers are finally getting some closure.
That's amazing. It's like something you'd see on a TV show, but it's happening in real life.
Right. Another really interesting use of AI is in analyzing body camera footage.
We talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah. Police departments are using AI to look for potential cases of misconduct, like when an officer might have used too much force.
Okay, so that could be a good way to hold police officers accountable for their actions.
Exactly. And it can help to make police departments more transparent so that the public can see what's actually going on.
Right. It's not going to solve every problem, but it's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Okay, so those are some of the positive applications of AI in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But what about the other side of the coin?
Yeah, the not so good stuff.
Where are we seeing AI being used in ways that are worrisome?
Well, one of the big ones is facial recognition technology.
Oh, yeah, I've heard a lot about that.
A lot of police departments are using facial recognition to identify suspects.
Okay, so how does that work?
They can use it with footage from security cameras, or even in real time with cameras mounted on police cars or that officers are wearing.
So they can just scan a crowd and see if anyone matches a suspect's description.
Right. It sounds like a good idea in theory.
Yeah, it could help catch criminals.
Right. But the problem is that these systems aren't perfect.
And I remember the Alternative World episode talking about that. They said there were issues with accuracy, especially for people of color.
Exactly. Studies have shown that facial recognition systems are more likely to misidentify people with darker skin tones.
Which means someone could get arrested for a crime they didn't commit.
Exactly. Just because a computer made a mistake.
That's really scary. And it could make the racial disparities in our justice system even worse.
Absolutely. That's why a lot of people are saying that we need to regulate facial recognition technology or even ban it completely.
So that's one area where AI is being used in a way that's causing a lot of concern.
Yeah. And another one is predictive policing. We talked about this earlier. The idea is that AI can help police predict where crimes are going to happen, but the problem is that those predictions can be based on biased data.
Right, so it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. If you keep sending police to the same neighborhoods over and over again based on biased predictions, then of course you're going to see more arrests in those neighborhoods.
Right. And the data just keeps getting reinforced. It makes you wonder if these systems are actually making us safer or if they're just perpetuating injustice.
That's the million-dollar question, and it's a question we all need to be thinking about. Because with AI, as with so many technologies, there's a real tension between the potential benefits and the potential harms. We have to be aware of both.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
We've talked about how AI can be used to solve crimes, to hold police accountable, and to make our community safer. But we've also talked about the risks of bias, the potential for these systems to be used in discriminatory ways, and the need for transparency and oversight.
It's a complex issue, but it's an issue that's not going away. AI is becoming more and more prevalent in our lives, so we need to be having these conversations. We need to be asking tough questions, and we need to be demanding that these technologies are used in a way that benefits everyone.
That's such a great point. The future of AI is not set in stone. It's up to us to shape it,
Yeah.
to decide how we want to use these powerful technologies,
Yeah.
and to make sure that they're used in a way that creates a more just and equitable world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's shaping our world. Until then, stay curious and keep questioning.